Hello everyone! Here I am, on time as usual. What's this going on with the lighting? That's good. Okay. How is everyone doing? I'm back. I was away and now I am back. And I am back on time. My usual starting time of 17 minutes past 8 p.m. UK time. Perfect. I have some green nails you can't see, so they're just kind of invisible. Let me show you. How do I do this? I can't be bothered to do it. Anyway, they're green. They're the same color as the background. Hello everyone. How was my holiday? My holiday was great. I did actually want to I've got a million things to talk about because I've been away for 2 weeks and there's been 2 weeks worth of nonsense. And I might not even be here next week. I haven't decided yet. We're gonna see. But I'm here today. But I did want to quickly, for the live stream viewers only, just cover a thing that happened while I was on holiday. If you follow me on Blue Sky, you already know this, so maybe you should follow me on Blue Sky to find out. But I just thought I'd talk about it quickly first anyway. So I went to Slovenia, which is a country in Europe that borders Italy and Austria and a few others. Croatia. It's a really beautiful country. Hello, Poppy. And it has incredible mountains, like rivers, forests, people. It's just a really great place. I really recommend it if you ever get the chance to go to like that part of Europe. But Slovenia also has mental weather. If you've been watching this YouTube channel for a while, you might know a few years ago I talked about how I was in Slovenia and they had these crazy floods where like they're still dealing with the damage from the floods even now. And basically the whole country flooded in the, like a series of a few days, and I had to do this mad escape where I basically barely made it out. It was pretty crazy. Anyway, this year's extreme weather event, we were in the tent, just a normal tent. You know, sometimes you have tents with like an outer layer and then a bit you hook in on inside for the sleeping compartment. So we had that, asleep in there, and at like 5 or 6 in the morning, woke up to just, you know, sometimes you hear thunder even when it's quite close and it's like, and it kind of, there's an explosion sound. Sometimes it rumbles for a little bit and then you hear it echoing and it kind of goes away. This was like constant thunder, just like, just the clouds just did not stop rumbling. And then we could hear this noise like pew, 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 like getting faster and heavier. And basically it started doing, out of nowhere, no like rain precursor, just straight into giant hailstones. Here's a photo of some of the hailstones. They were big. There was a lot of them. And also, this is a shot from inside the sleeping compartment the next morning with the sunlight coming through. This is like one of those pitch black tents, which I really recommend, by the way. And the hailstones tore through the tent and through the sleeping compartment section. So some of these hailstones went through 2 layers of fabric. And we were just like in the tent, just like, fuck, what the hell do we do? So we just put pillows over our head, got under all of our duvets, and just basically curled up and prayed. I don't know how long it went on for, like 10 minutes or something at most. But no one from my like group of people got injured, which was good. I didn't hear about any major injuries, I guess because it was at a very early hour. But it destroyed some people's tents. It destroyed our tent. It was just like a colander afterwards. This was the first night, by the way, of 7. We just had to like duct tape it up basically, and it was fine from then. But it destroyed some people's cars as well. I don't know why the vehicles in our area were spared and just like in the same camping field, but like 5 minutes walk in a different direction, people's cars were just like dented to shit. I don't know. I do know someone who brought their brand new van. They bought a van in Italy. They flew in, they bought a van in Italy and drove it to Slovenia. And this was like day 2 of them owning it. The only miles on the clock were to drive from Italy to this campsite. And then it was like dented to shit. Quite unfortunate. But yeah, it was a good holiday. I went to a music festival. I saw some good bands. I saw a lot of thrash metal bands. It was a really good time, and I felt very refreshed from all the horrors of the world, the horrors of the UK in particular, when I was there, because when you like interact with normal people, they're just normal, and it's just like, I mean, metalheads aren't normal, but they're normal for me. And they're normal to me. People are just people, and the world of British politics and media and the transphobes just doesn't exist in other countries or even other parts of the UK. So that was, yeah, good time. We survived the hail. Have you ever been in hail this mad? I don't know. Tom is well known for music and sports festivals throughout the summer. Yeah, they have loads of festivals there. I'm not going to talk about Tom in loads. It's just a great place. You should go there. I'm not going to talk about it because I have 100 things to say about it, and I'll talk about it all evening. But we have a lot of things to cover. So we are going to cover some of these things. You're a normal metalhead. Normal for a metalhead or normal and a metalhead? Because they are different claims, and the second one is not believable at all. Metalheads are normal, yeah. I mean, I guess so. If you think... I mean, when all your friends are metalheads, then running around in circles and screaming God hates us all or something and getting drunk until you can't walk is normal, so... But yeah, so what should we talk... Poppy, come on. Poppy's been super clingy since I got back, understandably. But she's doing a lot of claw digging at the moment, which is unfortunate. What should we talk about first? I'm going to talk about this. We can start off on a rant. Oh, I see a maths super chat from Sean. Thanks, Sean. I'll get to a super chat section like halfway through. Yeah, Ozzy Osbourne died. That is a sad event in the metalhead world. His funeral was today, actually. My like group of metal girlfriends, one of them went to the funeral and left some flowers on there with our names written. Well, our group name written on there, which is nice. Anyway, let's start off with a rant. Okay. So, I saw this tweet on Twitter by Victoria Smith, who is a gender critical activist and writer, journalist, I don't know, someone who writes things and is relevant in the British media world somehow and is gender critical. And it's a big claim to say the most delusional and least self-aware tweet I've seen in my life, because Twitter is full of delusional, non-self-aware people, and even within the gender critical movement, like, you're competing with J.K. Rowling and all these people who just are delusional and not self-aware at all. But I don't know, something about this just made me want to like scream. She says, no one who calls feminists transphobes. So here, when she says feminists, she's talking about herself, but she's just talking about the gender critical movement who aren't feminists. It's like a propaganda attempt. Anyway, no one who calls feminists transphobes has ever had a conversation with us about what we believe. It's been years and they're yet to respond to it at all. It feels kind of embarrassing that we ever expected more. Victoria, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you on about? There's just absolutely unreal. Every single trans person who has ever made an account on the internet has felt has been forced to have a conversation with gender critical people about what they believe. I've done it like literally thousands of times. The only reason that anyone is watching this YouTube channel at all is because I spent like 10 years of my life talking to gender critical people every single day, understanding what they're saying and like addressing the points they make, coming up with arguments they don't have responses to. We know deeply what you stand for. And also, the gender critical movement is platformed to an insane degree in the UK. From left to right, the full media world constantly puts gender critical arguments front and center. Even in stories about trans rights, they still include all these gender critical talking points, sometimes only include gender critical talking points. They constantly hear from gender critical people giving their exact views word for word. Then they won't include trans people's views word for word. They'll just be summarized in gender critical language. We literally just had the Supreme Court ruling, which only featured cis people and gender critical people in the courtroom. And they made a decision where they put gender critical like ideology into fucking law, like changed actual law, used a load of gender critical talking points. What are you talking about? It's just unbelievable. Nobody's had a conversation with us to see what you believe. You guys are going on podcasts all the time and saying things like, we need to reduce the number of trans people because we're a huge problem to a sane world. You write books saying the problem of transsexualism, the problem of transsexualism would be best addressed by morally mandating out of existence. We know exactly what you stand for. I know your full argument line. I've written articles about it. I know hundreds of other trans people who have written articles about it. But what makes this so delusional and like not self-aware is this is like a complete 180 flip of reality. Because gender criticals have no idea what trans people are saying. They have no idea about any of our arguments. You see them making all these claims about what gender ideology is, and you're like, I don't know anyone who says they believe in gender ideology. And when you're summarizing gender ideology to me, like a classic gender critical position will be, oh, trans people think that just because a boy wants to wear a dress that he must be a girl. Like, I've genuinely never met a single person who believes that. That's purely a construction in the gender critical world, like the biggest straw man of all time, which is their main opponent. I don't think anyone from the gender critical movement has really had a conversation where they've attempted to listen and counter our points with a trans person. Like, I know a conversation is always between at least two people. So when I've had conversations with gender criticals, necessarily they've had a conversation with me. But what I mean is, gender criticals have all the power in this situation. They are trying to take away our human rights. The discussion is about our human rights, our future, our healthcare. None of it affects them at all. So if I say gender critical ideology is false because of the following things, they don't need to address that. It doesn't affect them. Who cares? It doesn't matter whether they're wrong or right, because they have politicians in power and they have the media and they have unlimited money. Whereas we have to respond to this stuff because they're saying things like, we need to ban trans people from the toilets at work, and here are the reasons why. And you're like, okay, you've given 3 reasons. They're all factually false, internally inconsistent, and morally wrong. And here are the reasons why those things. You naturally are forced to engage with these people. But we just fell off. You're naturally forced to engage with these people because they are attacking your future and your freedom. So we know, of course, we know what they have to say, and they don't need to hear what we're saying. I mean, in order to be gender critical, you have to be ignorant about trans people and unempathetic and uninterested in having a conversation. Otherwise, you would talk to us and realize that we're normal people and we do actually deserve human rights, and then you're not gender critical anymore. So just insane. How can you get into this position where you have, like, she writes in the media all the time. Like an example, she's writing here in Unheard, some British magazine that people read. She herself writes her own views down. She could have had conversations. Obviously, she's blocked me on Twitter. I haven't blocked her. because she doesn't want to have a conversation with trans people. How can you be in this position where you have, like, as a movement, the entire media, some of the most famous people on earth, like Elon Musk, Donald Trump, J.K. Rowling, Keir Starmer, like people leading actual countries? You have the entire political establishment, the power center of it, the entire media, all the money, and still you feel like people aren't listening to you. The problem is, the real reason that you feel like that is because when you say what you actually want, however you describe it, however coded or not coded, what you want, how you express what you want, people will be like, oh, that sounds bad. Like, that sounds immoral. And you'll be like, no, you don't understand it. We want to reduce the number of trans people because they're a huge problem to a sane world. And you're like, well, that sounds like eugenics or a genocide or something. And they're like, no, I'll sue you if you say that. What we really mean is, and that's why you feel like you're not understood. That's why you feel like people aren't listening, because people come at you and they say the gender critical movement is a hate movement, which is based upon science denial and irrational prejudice, and it seeks to remove human rights from a vulnerable minority. You'd be like, I don't identify with that description. All I want to do is, and then you just describe that exact same thing back to someone. Like, but you don't internally, you don't believe about yourself that you are a hateful, bigoted person who wants to remove a vulnerable minority's human rights, because if you believe that about yourself, then you'd just be openly evil, wouldn't you? Which some gender critical people are, but most of them aren't. Or most of them don't see themselves that way. I can't think of any other explanation other than she is literally delusional, literally has lost grip on reality, where she thinks that trans people are trying to have a conversation with them. I mean, I probably talked to her at one point, because why would she have blocked me otherwise? Maybe I just disagreed with something she said and she blocked me instantly. Maybe she pre-blocked me. Some of them have. But I've talked with loads of the big name gender criticals, some of them in DMs, some of them for months, some actually for years. I mean, we're constantly having to discuss with them. What are you fucking talking about? Unbelievable. I just think it's like, yeah, I'm almost speechless of how ridiculous this is as a take. Like, absolutely ridiculous. But I just felt like I had to say something about it, because I was just, what are you on? But yeah, I don't know. The gender critical movement inherently doesn't have a grip on reality, as we will see later on with the upcoming videos. But this just seems a little bit next level to me. What do you think? Do you think I'm overreacting a bit? I don't think so. Another point. So I literally had a call-in show where, I mean, it's still running today. You should definitely check it out. The Transatlantic call-in show, where you, a gender critical person, can call in and talk to trans people and explain your views, and you're prioritized in the call list. They really want gender critical callers because that's the whole point of the show. And I did that show for years. A bunch of the people on there have been doing it even longer than me now. Every single week for like 4 years or something. Is there a gender critical call-in show where I can call in and address their arguments? And like confront them with things? No, because they don't need to do that. Absolute clown. Ridiculous person. Ridiculous comment. She should be embarrassed to have ever written this. Goodness. Right. Let's keep going. Got so many things to cover. I want to talk about this next. Okay, let's do it. Are we going to have sound? Probably. It's probably going to be sound. See what the volume's like.
During Pride, we celebrate
That's quite low. Let's turn it up so...
indeed everybody in
Still quite quiet.
The UK has become a...
Why is that so quiet? Oh, it's because it's not coming out my headphones. That might be better.
Today during Pride, we celebrate that truly transformational work because of you and indeed everybody in
how's
this
that
garden.
for volume?
Is
that a little bit quiet?
Better place,
I noticed last
where
time the
people
recordings
are
I did were a bit quiet.
To be who they are,
how does this sound?
Who they love.
I'll wait for some feedback. this is a good comment that I think's worth talking about. So someone here in chat has said, I'm not reacting. Trans liberation demands a radical position, at least as I see it. I think I agree with you. And I think that, I mean, I guess it's the history of any like human rights movement. You need fundamental change. It doesn't happen through just like incremental reforms. Sometimes some parts of human rights movements happen in incremental reforms, but there's usually a range of views from people who are pushing within existing power structures to make incremental reforms in order to get like small gains in human rights. And as part of the same movement, or at least adjacent to that movement, there's always a more radical side who's saying we want fundamental change. That's how it worked for women's rights. That's how it worked for the civil rights movement in the US. That's how it's worked for gay rights. For gay rights, for example, there were some people who were saying, all we need is schools to teach about gay people and for gay marriage to be legal. And then there are other people with more radical views saying, like, the state enforcing a family unit is bad on people, and we should be taught that sexuality isn't just there are some gay people, but otherwise, we should be taught that sexuality is this whole range and spectrum, and heterosexuality is like indoctrinated onto people. That is a more radical view, which is, anyway, more likely to be correct than the incremental changes. But on the trans rights position, I would absolutely not disagree with someone who said we need a more radical change. Like the idea that the world should just tolerate a handful of trans people. I mean, it would be good if the world just tolerated trans people, but also, like, as well as heterosexuality being enforced onto people, so is being cis. And if we didn't have gender rules and gender roles and stuff, the world would be a better place, and that would require huge, like, radical changes to how human society works in order to get there eventually. I don't disagree with that at all. But also, because of the situation we are in today, at least in the UK, I'm not actually arguing for those things right now. It's not where my efforts are going. Another example would be, we have birth certificates that have sex on. We have passports that have sex on. Is there really an argument for having that field recorded? Do we need illegal sex? Like, we don't have a legal race. We don't have a legal religion. We don't have a legal value of pregnancy or a whole other things that people get discriminated on. We do for sex. We could be arguing, like, the trans rights movement in the UK's core position could be we should abolish legal sex. And I know there are some people who are arguing for that, but I think the majority of, like, the trans rights movement isn't focused on that, because we're in, like, putting out fires, damage control, trying to stop our rights being stripped away mode. And we're saying things like, don't ban us from the toilets at work. Please, can we just carry on having healthcare? Please, can this person just update their birth certificate? And so I agree, and I would never stand in the way of someone saying we need radical change for trans rights. So if you're someone who's looking to condemn me as being a radical or whatever, yeah, I'm not going to fight against people who are saying that we shouldn't be teaching, like, girls wear dresses and boys wear trousers or something like that. That's a garbage thing, and I think it should go away. But the positions that I'm spending most of my time on aren't radical at all. And most of them are actually, the rights we had 10 years ago, we should still have them. Like, that is the opposite of radical. And I think that the mainstream majority trans rights position is so non-extreme, so non-radical, that it probably should be a lot more radical. But I think anyone who's painting the current, like, mainstream UK trans rights movement as radical is just not got any grip on the reality of civil rights movements in history. I feel like we are the least extreme, least radical, least direct action human rights movement of the last, like, century. And maybe that's bad. Maybe that's why we're doing so badly. but also we're one of the smallest ones and one of the least well-funded ones, and yeah, and the landscape has changed for how civil rights movements work. But yeah, in conclusion, I don't know. I think if anyone was saying, "Oh, the trans rights movement is so radical," like it is not at all. Like, not from any rational outsider observer standpoint. If you asked most trans people what the top 5 things they wanted were, they would probably list off a bunch of things that they either had 10 years ago, at least in the UK, or would be, I want healthcare, which we've never really had in the UK, which isn't very radical at all. So, yeah. Anyway, let's move on to this next thing. So, the Labour Party put out this video of Keir Starmer at a Pride event. So, we may remember a few weeks ago that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer were banned from all Pride events. They were, well, not all Pride events, they were banned from the major Pride events like London Pride, Manchester Pride, and a few of the other big ones. They did a joint statement banning all political parties, but specifically in response to Labour's position on trans rights. So and usually political parties do their little propaganda photos at Pride. There's a whole bunch of Keir Starmer from Prides from like 10 years ago of him being at the front and having like trans rights flag painted on his face and stuff. Now they're banned, they can't do that, so they just held their own Pride event, and here is the video propaganda that they put out for this event.
Today during Pride we celebrate that truly transformational work. Because of you and indeed everybody in this garden, the UK has become a better place where people are freer to be who they are, love who they love. But of course there is always more work to do, and I accept that, but I want you to know that this is a government committed to the fundamental principles of respect to dignity and equality, absolutely determined to improve the lives of your community right across Britain.
Like, just fucking unbelievable. Like, Keir Starmer's government, the first government to put out anti-LGBT legislation since Margaret Thatcher's government the year I was born. The most anti-LGBT government of my lifetime, including like the Boris Johnson government. The government that is so right-wing on LGBT rights that is further right of the Theresa May government, which was a conservative government. Here he's saying the UK has become a better place for people, where people are freer to be who they are. It hasn't since he's taken over. It's got significantly worse. We've seen international human rights organizations mark us like severely down on human rights, particularly for LGBT rights, particularly for trans rights, specifically since Labour have got into power, since Keir Starmer has been in power. It just crazy. Like, he accepts that there's a lot of work to do. The first thing that he needs to do is undo every single thing that Labour has done for LGBT rights since they got into power. Because all they have done, the only things they have done in terms of LGBT rights, is take LGBT people's rights away. That is it. They've removed access to healthcare for trans kids, despite having absolutely no evidence to justify that at all. They've basically reintroduced Section 28, but for trans people, into schools, which is horrific. They've just presided over the Supreme Court ruling and blindly accepted it. He's been saying that trans women aren't women, like, in official statements. Like, just absolutely crazy that he has the guts to put this propaganda out, and I just wonder who it's for. So anyway, the community reaction initially to this was, "What the fuck, you liar? This is absolutely ridiculous. It's just so brazen." I saw a few people pointing out that all of the bunting was just the old school LGBT rights flag rather than the New Progress flag. I mean, yeah, but also, like, if we look at the end here, they do have the trans flag colours and like the black and the brown balloon mixed in on the balloons. I'm not particularly interested in scrutinizing the bunting. But then I think the next part of the community reaction was, well, who are these people? Who are these people at this event? Why are there a bunch of LGBT people who are prepared to, like, rehabilitate Keir Starmer's reputation when it comes to LGBT rights when they've been so bad? It's not like they've taken their hands off the wheel and nothing has happened. It's not that they've totally given up. It's not even like they've given up and they're not even pretending that they haven't given up, or so. They are actively taking LGBT people's rights away and putting out this propaganda stuff. And there are all these people here standing, like, giving him a cover for that. So obviously people were looking into it and working out who these people are. And it turns out that it was LGBT Foundation, London Friend, Switchboard, and Stonewall, who are all fairly major LGBT rights organisations in the UK. And in response, they put out a statement. And I think a lot of people were very angry that they had done this. And I think it's worth reading their statement. And I do think it is kind of complicated. So they say, it's not too long a statement. Many people in the LGBT community are feeling angry, hurt, and frustrated. Trust in the government, especially from trans people, is deeply damaged. We see and feel that in our work lives every day. As the 4 leaders of LGBT organisations, we took this important and rare opportunity during Pride to join many others at number 10. So that's like our White House, basically. Including many volunteers to recognise and celebrate our collective efforts and contributions over 50 years. But it wasn't just celebration. We had the chance to speak directly to the Prime Minister to emphasise the situation right now and explain what needs to change. We talked about human rights for everyone, the broken trust and the need to build trust, particularly with trans people, healthcare access, hate crime, and the need to deliver on manifesto commitments. So, for example, in their manifesto, they committed to reforming the Gender Recognition Act, which there's no way they're going to do. They committed to a conversion therapy ban, which I'd be shocked if they did. Leaders from our sector took to the lectern and spoke with the authenticity, challenge and conviction, and were listened to in the Gardens number 10 by those at the top government. We're committed to engage with the government further. It will be critical time for equality decisions in the UK with the impending EHRC guidance, which is the organisation that's attempting to bring in a bathroom ban for the entire UK without, like, any real proper process. Our organisations were established in difficult times with a single goal of improving LGBT lives. Together, we have made so much progress over the years. It has taken unity and conviction. To visit number 10 was a chance to recognise everyone's contributions over 50 years, often given with courage and tenacity in difficult circumstances, with politicians and community partners, including LGBT people and trans-led organisations. None of these 4 are, as to my understanding, trans-led. Despite the progress, there is still so far to go to improve the lives of LGBT people in these turbulent times when rights are being rolled back across the world and the UK is falling down the global leaderboard on LGBT rights. Yeah, because the Keir Starmer government is literally taking away LGBT people's rights, but okay. There is still too much hate in our society. Conversion practices are not yet banned, and too many people feel uncomfortable holding their partner's hand in public. Absolutely. And hate crimes against all LGBT people have been going up for the last 10 years in the UK. And they are absolutely... I will eat my hat if this year's hate crime statistics since Labour's been in power have gone down. There is absolutely no chance that is happening. Guaranteed they've gone up. For a more inclusive... So here's like the key part. For a more inclusive society, we must work with government and those in power. We've had to do this in recent decades to push for legal change, such as equalising the age of consent. So, if you don't know, for a while there was a law where... I don't know what it is in the UK, I think it's 18 plus, I don't know, it might be 16. But if 2 18-year-olds who are straight have sex, that was legal. Or if like a 21-year-old has sex with an 18-year-old, that is legal in the UK if they were straight. But a few decades ago, that was illegal if they were gay, and they both had to be like 21 or 25 or something. So literally, you had to be older to have gay sex than to have straight sex, which made no sense at all. Brazenly homophobic, was on the books for years and years and years. Like groups like Stonewall got that removed, which is a good thing. And now it's equal across the board, regardless of your sexuality. Achieving equal marriage and gender recognition. We cared for, held and buried loved ones during the AIDS crisis whilst meeting with homophobic government to convince them to make change. We must be visible too and share our lived experiences, as reflected by someone attending the event, noting that there was at least one trans person there. I know at least one of the trans people who was there. So anyway, as a trans person, it was incredibly powerful to be openly and visible trans in such a space and talk about my own lived experience and the feelings of the communities we represent. We cannot affect change if we're not willing to be in those... God. Why did I have to sneeze then? I've got to record that bit. I'll edit this bit out. As a trans person, it was incredibly powerful to be openly and visible trans in such a space and talk about my own lived experience and the feelings of the communities we represent. We cannot affect change if we're not willing to be in those spaces. There are many ways to press for change. We need to protest and engagement for people across the sector, not one or the other. Change will only be achieved by uniting around our shared vision and our diverse approaches and strengths. But we must be in the room arguing the case for change time and again, and be listened to by people in power, including the government. We must persuade people why change is needed and ensure they hear LGBT voices. We must ensure there is representation, including trans people at every stage. We need to give the confidence to make the arguments themselves, then takes the steps in the right direction. We will be the critical friends we said we would be and hold the government to account. We must be present in the room and engaging with those in power. While it's uncomfortable for some, we must remember that those who oppose LGBT inclusion are securing influence by engaging at the highest levels. We must be in the room to minimize their impact. Engagement isn't the same as endorsement. Presence isn't the same as compliance, but we must find a path forward together. Sign the 4 CEOs of those organizations. So, I think their statement is fair. I don't know what you think. I'll be interested to know what you do think. I think a lot of people were still angry at this, but I think what they've written there is, at the best, at worst, it's true from their point of view, and maybe you could say that you don't really agree with the final conclusion they've reached. But I think the reality is that none of these organizations or people are fighting against LGBT people's rights. I don't think any of them are attempting to get in the way of that. I don't think they're there to give cover to Keir Starmer. I don't think they're like fake lame duck organizations. I don't think they're nothing like the EHRC, which is meant to be a human rights organization, but which is, just openly anti-LGBT. They're nothing like that, but they're also nothing like something like Ofcom, which is an organization which meant to like police the media, and if they are really bigoted or derogatory towards minority groups or something, they're meant to step in. But Ofcom never does anything. They're just like a fake lame duck organization. I don't think that's true for any of these 4 organizations. I think all of the people who went to this event, at least from these organizations, genuinely thinks me going to this event is the best course of action from the options I have available to me to improve the lives of LGBT people in this country. I think that is true. And you might think, that's ridiculous. They're wrong. This isn't the best course of action because now they've just made Keir Starmer look better or whatever. I think that's also a fine position to hold. I'm quite angry about this, and if I was invited, I don't know what I would have done. I would love to go and talk to Keir Starmer and tell him to fuck off to his face, but then I'll never get invited back again. So it is difficult. But I think if you believe that it was wrong for them to go to this, I think that's also probably an equally valid point of view. But I also wouldn't think that you are someone who opposes LGBT rights. Like if you're like on the side of, oh yeah, they should have gone and engaged, and you're looking at all these people saying they shouldn't have gone and engaged, like all of what I just said about you is also true for them. I don't think people who are saying none of these organizations should be going and like legitimizing the government. I don't think any of the people saying, or most of the people saying that, aren't opposed to LGBT rights. They're not there to just dismantle the LGBT rights movement. They're not saying we shouldn't do what's best for LGBT people. I also think they believe what they're saying is for the best interests of LGBT people, at least most of the people from both of these sides in general. I think these are both like valid positions, and it's like neither of these are like inherently morally incorrect positions, and neither of these positions are like provably false. I think what is difficult is we don't know what is the actual optimal strategy. We can't know until we do it and we look back and we see what we could have improved on, and we compare to like other human rights movements to see what has worked for them. All we can do is try to do what we think is best and not get in each other's way, because I do think it takes all kinds of things. Like they say, they think that we need protest and engagement. And how I read that is they're saying, if you're someone who wants to protest against Keir Starmer and the Labour government and say they're the most anti-LGBT government of like our lifetimes or whatever, which is something I say quite a lot, they're not going to get in our way. And they're kind of saying, but we also believe that some of us need to engage with the government, and it would be good if you didn't get in our way. And I feel like you need this range. You need, like, as I was talking about earlier, I feel like you need this range of like the like more liberal position of like incremental change, and then the more like radical position of like tear the whole thing down. I don't think just one of those on its own is, I just think maybe one of those on its own could work, but I think having that whole range isn't detrimental to us. I think it's all positive, and we don't know which parts are the most net positive, but I don't think they're net negative. That said, I think that it is important that we criticize both of those. Like, I think it's completely fair to say, what the fuck? They've just produced this like propaganda rehabilitating Keir Starmer's image as like pro-LGBT, and you're in the fucking video. Like, do you want to be using your reputation to justify what, like, the horrific stuff that Labour's doing at the moment for LGBT people? I think that's a fair criticism. But then also, I think it's a fair criticism for them to say, like, to me, well, what the fuck are you doing? Just saying this government is, like, dead to you. Well, all the gender criticals are going and talking to Keir Starmer. They're in his ear every single day. So if he only hears from one side, then and he clearly has no moral compass at all, then maybe they'll just get what they want more. Yeah, I do think it's complicated. I do think that the anger at this event is kind of justified, and I also think that the response, this statement they've put out, is quite justified. Yeah, so there's a comment here. I fear a lot of them are there to improve their own position and influence rather than the people that they purport to represent. I hope I'm just being a tad too cynical. I think that's also a valid criticism. I couldn't point to any of the people who I know of that were there and say they are someone who is just in it for their own, like, ego or reputation or monetary gain or something. And not because I don't want to, but because I couldn't say that about anyone who I'm aware of. But it's certainly a concern. Like, the people who are more likely to be like, okay, well, I better engage with the government, are more likely to be the kind of people who want to engage with the government. And maybe that will select for not always fully virtuous motivations. But I don't know. I think it's just one of those things where you in theory, you don't want to be getting in the way. You don't want to, like, aggressively shut down people trying to engage with the government on the basis of them engaging with the government. But it's important to be continuously critical. And if you see someone, you're like, hang on, this person here actually doesn't appear to have the best interests of LGBT people in their mind, and they just seem to be trying to make money, ego, fame, whatever off this, then that's the time to like criticize them. And you see this all the time. It's way more common on like the right wing and stuff, where an LGBT people will sell out others in order to get fame or money or whatever. But that doesn't mean it can't happen on our side too. But I don't think it's inherent with that position. I don't believe like that all 4 of these CEOs, for example, and everyone who went along with them are there to walk the walk and talk the talk and gain the benefits of being in close proximity to the like prime minister. I don't think that's their only motivations. I genuinely think that at least a major part of their motivation is fighting for the rights of LGBT people. Like if you really wanted to climb the power ladder and you're really in it for yourself, you would be like Wes Streeting. Like Wes Streeting is gay, and he has benefited from gay rights, but he is now in a position of power, actively taking away rights from LGBT people, and that's because he doesn't have LGBT people's rights at heart. He just cares about himself, and very clearly he is like radically different from anyone who's trying to change like make the world better for LGBT people, and sure there's a sliding scale here, but I think it's quite obvious with him, and there are other people like him, and I don't think that applies to those 4 organizations. I also know some other people who went, and I don't think it applies to them. It's difficult. I'll be interested to know what you guys think anyway. Let me know. So let's keep going. We'll do super chats in a bit after the next one, or the one after perhaps. What should we do next? What do we want? Do we want something ridiculous? Do we want a rant, or do we want some news? I know what you were going to say. Whenever I give you this choice, you always say a rant. I didn't say ridiculous. I mean, I guess all the news from the gender criticals is ridiculous. I didn't say ridiculous news though. We're laughing at ridiculous people or news. Oh man, you are gonna say rant. What can I guess this one's a rant. So for a while now, various sporting organizations have been giving in to the anti-trans movements, and they have been banning trans people from sports. Lots of them have been bringing in blanket bans for all trans women, regardless of whether they transitioned before puberty or not, regardless of whether they've medically transitioned or not, without any evidence at all, based on just backlash and anger about trans people existing. It's true for like football and rugby and a few others. Major organizations have just said, fuck it, we're not going to do what's right. We're not going to back anything up with science. We're just giving in. Some of those you can at least have an argument for. In football, you could say, we believe that no amount of medical transition undoes like advantage that one might have from male puberty. That still wouldn't justify a blanket ban of trans women, because lots transition without going through male puberty. But a blanket ban would be a lazy response, because you can just hope that most people don't even know that some people transition before puberty. And a lot of people, I mean, lots of the transphobes don't even know what puberty is. But you can at least have that argument. I don't think there's actually any evidence to show that trans women have an unfair advantage at football, regardless of whether they transition before or after puberty. You can make that claim at least. It's something that could be probably needs addressing with some evidence. Either way, however we end up resolving this, we currently don't have the evidence. Hopefully one day we will, and maybe that will result in either a full rollback of the ban or a partial rollback of the ban or some more advanced regulation. However, there are some things which make absolutely no fucking sense at all, in no way, and are completely indefensible. I can see people in chat already saying chess. We've already seen them try and ban trans women from chess. I don't think trans women are banned from chess at some levels, but not all levels. But the newest one, which is literally just as stupid as chess, is darts. Yet they have banned trans women from darts, which makes no sense at all. Completely ridiculous. What, like, the argument for things like football and rugby and boxing or whatever is that on average, cis men, I mean, the actual argument is cis men are stronger and bigger than cis women. And then they say, therefore, trans women must be, even though there's no actual evidence to back that up. But clearly male puberty does something which benefits a lot of people when it comes to some types of physical sports. How does that affect darts exactly? What biological advantage are you claiming that trans women have over cis women at darts? Like, you got the darts are really heavy. Those pathetic, weak cis women can't even pick up a dart. Their brains are too stupid to count to the number 180. Their hands are too shaky to throw something in a straight line. They throw like a girl. Like, what are you talking about? Just completely brazenly stupid. There's no world where, I mean, obviously there's no evidence for this. There's no evidence for any of the bans that they're trying to bring in for any of the sports. Or at best there's some weak evidence which is contradictory and they haven't resolved yet. And there's some evidence for and some evidence against. In the case of darts, there obviously isn't any evidence. What even is the claim? Like, do they even have a claim other than, I don't like trans people? No. So here we have Noah Lynn van Leuven. Sorry to all the Dutch people in the chat. Terrible pronunciation. She's been banned. She is a darts world champion, and she's very good at darts, apparently. She was banned after being in a darts tournament. It says here, gender-critical protesters thrown out after confronting trans darts player. She went to go and play darts. A bunch of gender criticals turned up and abused her. And then they were thrown out. I mean, rightfully so. But I think this says it, or was it a different article I was reading? She, in this tournament that the gender critical protesters turned up, she beat one cis woman and then she lost to another one, so it's not even like she happens to be freakishly good at darts, better than everyone else, kind of once in a generation talent or whatever. She's just very, I mean, she's world champion, so she's obviously very good at darts, but she is still beatable, and now she has been banned based on nothing. This is from The Sun, which incredibly does a better job than lots of news organizations in this. So it says, in September, the general meeting... so the decision was finalized after a vote by World Darts Federation, I guess, WDF, I don't know, members. So yeah, like, they put this to a vote of members, so it wasn't down to scientific evidence. They just amassed enough people who were angry about trans people to ban them. That's it. I mean, I guess that's democracy in action, but when it comes to things like sport and science, like, should we be having a democratic vote on science? We should not. We should be having a science on science. Like, that's the whole point in science. Anyway, in September, a general meeting saw a remit put forward calling for the organization to restrict participation in women's tournaments to only players who are female by birth. So this is why, I mean, the Sun's done a slightly better job. Still not the best phrasing, but female at birth. At least they're not saying biologically female. So yeah, anyway, she's now banned from playing in the women's tournaments or whatever. So we had this same, like, it's just the same as the chess thing. We had the same discussion when they attempted to ban trans women from chess. Oh, when they did ban them at certain levels. There is a reason why there are women's and girls' competitions of things like chess and darts. It's not completely nonsense. It does make sense to have a women's, in my opinion, it does make sense to have a women's category and then, or women's and girls category, and then an open category. Because in lots of these sports, and lots of sports full stop, there is a lot of sexism. There's also lots of homophobia and evidently lots of transphobia. But there's lots of sexism, and that doesn't just come out in the way of some major top-level darts players get told some sexist remark when they're playing darts or something. This like manifests the whole like life cycle of a darts player. Even from an early age, if you were a boy and you were interested in playing darts and you were really good at it, you might be encouraged by your peers and your family and your like people around you. But if you're a girl, you're less likely to be encouraged and more likely to be dissuaded from doing so. There's less money for women doing sport. There's less of a like a community, less of a tradition of it. And all of these things add up to like reducing the number of female players of various sports that are male dominated. But also, as we saw when we were discussing chess, just knowing that your opponent is a man or a woman, regardless of whether that's true or not, can affect your performance because of sexist attitudes in society, etc. So having a women's only category can just encourage players to go along to things, and to make them feel more welcome and more confident joining, and then they can get to the point where they're confident enough in themselves in their sport that they can then go on and do the open category too. But it's a good like entry point, and it's a good social like protection, I guess. And that's why these things exist, and that's why banning trans women and girls from these categories is so ridiculous, because they obviously experience the same pressures that are there, like the same pressures that cause the need for these categories obviously apply to trans women and girls too. So there's no justification from banning them from these things where obviously male puberty has had no effect. And like I can personally attest to this from playing Pokemon cards, which is another thing which very clearly there is no biological advantage to, but is kind of male dominated. It's not as bad as some card games, but there are definitely more men and boys than there are women and girls. But like when I first started playing Pokemon cards again after my 25-year hiatus, I was just worried. I'd had a really bad experience with a different card game where I'd gone along and it just been a room full of men who didn't want me to be there and like just made me feel like an idiot. And I just didn't ever want to go to anything like that again. And when I was looking at going to Pokemon cards, I literally went on the like events page on a Facebook and zoomed in on the photos just to see if there were any women in the room. And when I saw there were, I was like, wow, maybe I can go to this. I'm not just going to be like excluded and talked down to and stuff like I had been before, a different thing. And then when I went, like my first round was against a woman, and it was just, it just gave me so much confidence to be there. But there were, sometimes you do face someone who says something sexist, and if there are other women in the room, they can be there to instantly back you up, which is something I've literally experienced. Very rare at Pokemon cards, but I have experienced at Pokemon cards, been in a situation where some man has said some sexist thing about one of the women in the room, and we all instantly are there to defend each other and be there for each other and like hold each other up, so you don't just feel crushed by this experience, and makes you feel like you are welcome there. And there isn't a women's league for Pokemon cards. Sometimes they do women's events, which have always been inclusive of trans people that I've seen. But yeah, like I know from personal experience that this, like, having women in these things does make a difference to your level of comfort and whether you want to attempt to do a sport or game at all in the first place. There's absolutely no justification for banning trans women from chess or darts or shooting or archery or anything like that. There is literally no way you could ever justify that. And anyone attempting to do so is just like brazenly exposing their transphobia. That is it. That is the full list of justifications for this kind of thing. You hate trans people. Provide me another argument. I have seen gender criticals say, like, males have a much better endurance for playing long chess games or some fucking insane thing like that, as if men are like stronger physically at chess, which is insane. And then secondly, that male essence isn't actually carried by anything which affects your physical stamina, like hormones or hemoglobin levels or anything like that, which changes in medical transition, but is in fact conferred to you by like your chromosomes. Just a completely delusional position. But anyway, if you're a gender critical person and you've got this far and you think trans people should be banned from darts and you think that maybe you're not a fucking idiot, you can write in the comments and explain to me what good reason there could possibly be for banning trans women from darts. Good luck. You don't have one. We're going to do one more, then we'll do Super Chat. So what should we do? Let's do... No, I want to do this one next. Going on vibes alone here. This is going to be a situation where I've read someone's name like hundreds of times over the years and years I've been following her online, and suddenly I realize I have to say it out loud, and I'm like, I don't actually know how to say it, and I'm probably going to look like an idiot, so I apologize in advance. I saw this article from Kat Tenbarge. Sorry if I got your surname wrong. And she has covered this Pedro Pascal smear campaign, and I had missed this because it's mainly gone on Twitter, which I don't really go on anymore. But you might know Pedro Pascal. We've covered him a few times. He is an American, I think. Oh God, I can't say that without checking it up. God, he's Chilean American. Okay, sorry for just assuming he was just American. So Pedro Pascal is a Chilean American. Poppy, clawing my legs. Right, third time lucky. Pedro Pascal is a Chilean American actor who has been in loads of major things, like, I don't know, loads of major things. Gone blank. But he is pro trans rights, amongst other things. He seems to have decent political positions across the board. And that has caused him to have political enemies, and they are attempting to frame him as a sexual harasser. Now, your instant response to this might be, oh, I see. When a right-wing man is a sexual harasser, you'll believe the accuser straight away. But when a left-wing man is a harasser, you'll say, oh, this is a smear campaign. No. That isn't what's happening here. This isn't a situation where a bunch of women have accused Pedro Pascal of being inappropriate or sexual harassment or something, and we're saying, oh, in this case, it doesn't count. There are no accusations. Which is kind of different to when it happens to all of these other celebrities who either are or then shortly afterwards become right-wing. So, as Kat points out, So Pedro Pascal is currently promoting Fantastic Four and Eddington, which is some of his films he's done recently. And he has been pro-trans rights, and he most recently called J.K. Rowling a heinous loser. So that means he made enemies specifically with the anti-trans movement. And you might recognize this person here, Kelly J. Keane, or Posey Parker, or one of the other names that she has, who is one of the main, probably after J.K. Rowling, one of the main voices, or the main voice in the gender critical movement in the UK. She's the one who did Let Women Speak. She's the one who did that tour of Australia where a load of sig-hailing Nazis turned up to support her protest. She's also the one who, when she went to New Zealand, had a can of soup poured on her, and she escaped from New Zealand and said she's never going back. She's very extreme, very openly anti-trans. She's not like the J.K. Rowling try and pretend to be reasonable. She has no pretenses of being reasonable. Anyway, she apparently originated this. So Rowling's allies were the first people to accuse Pascal of groping women, a narrative that started last year but gained massive traction in recent days. On Wednesday, a British anti-trans activist who paid for an I Love J.K. Rowling advert said he never gets the anxiety gropes around men, does he? On a clip of Pascal. Here he is holding the arm of this lady. After the success of that post, accounts that are known for derivative viral slop began creating their own memes that claim Pascal uses his anxiety as an excuse to initiate sexual contact with women. But they actually showed some video examples of this. I just want to update you in case you don't know the state of the world right now. But we are now at the AI smears, literally entirely fake videos of someone doing things like these. Okay, we just need to look at this. So this is allegedly a video, a montage of Pedro Pascal groping, kissing women without their consent. Just look at this. So here he is, holding this woman, holding her hand, and then leaning in for a kiss that she looks awkward about. Here he is in an interview where he literally gets up and kisses this woman. She seems kind of happy about it. Here he is, and he grabs this woman, and then he kisses her. She seems to be kind of up for this one, but then shocked afterwards. And here he is with his arm around another woman, and he just goes in and bites her chin or something. None of these are real. They might have seemed kind of believable, but they're literally entirely fake. And we know because we have the clips. For some reason, this Twitter's just shit. This first one just won't play for me. But we can see this one. This is one of the clips we just watched. He does put his hands on her waist here. He doesn't kiss her. This is just the full clip. I don't know if him putting his hands on her waist is super great, to be honest, but here's the interview. It's actually quite long and boring. He doesn't get up and kiss the host. Here's this other one where they do have their arms around each other. He holds a hand at one point. They're all kind of holding each other. He doesn't kiss her. So they're entirely fabricated, which is really crazy. So yeah, these posts and resulting discourse and tabloid media coverage of them also claim that Pascal has said he uses physical touch to ground himself when he experiences anxiety, but no such interview exists. So it's literally just completely made up, despite being cited by Google's AI summaries, by dozens of content creators and multiple news articles. So this is literally just fabricated out of thin air. There's something where he talks about being anxious, which isn't this. So importantly, the basis of the allegations against Pascal isn't true, and none of the women he's been accused of groping have said so themselves. One has even said the opposite. So importantly here, there are no accusations from anyone. It might come out, it might even be like an hour after this video releases, one of them does accuse him of something. Totally possible. And if that's the case, then I will believe that person, and we'll have to go through the usual process of this kind of thing. But this is different to what is usually happening, because the core of this is based on nothing. There are no accusations, and there are faked videos, faked interviews, fake things which AI is talking about. But what is important here as well is this was like started by the anti-trans movement in response to him being pro-trans. His sister is a trans woman. He has said quite a few things about trans rights. He's worn this Protect the Dolls t-shirt, which is a trans positive message. And he has said J.K. Rowling is a loser. So, of course, he's made enemies with the anti-LGBT rights movement. And so they fabricated this. And, like, if they're going to do this about a big celebrity like him, they're going to do this, like, this is the stage we're at. It will not be long until they're creating fake videos about random trans people. I mean, they all do already have fake videos of me and some other people, which they've been sharing, which is quite distressing, to be honest. But not to this level. But it won't be long until they are at this level. Like, if they've already got loads of fake accusations about me. They've got edited photos. Ages ago on this channel, we talked about some man who had been editing photos of me to make them look just a bit more manly, but like for months he'd just done like tens and tens of photos of me. We had like edited my hairline slightly higher. He'd like increased my like really crazy stuff. That was happening years ago. Fairly recently of me, they made some fake porn video or something, conveniently with my head cropped off. So you can't like I mean, it doesn't look like me anyway. But then if they're already doing that, and now of Pedro Pascal, where there was like thousands of hours of video that AI generator things can latch onto to make realistic videos, it cannot be far off. And when that happens, I don't really think that we have the tools and system in place to start dealing with that. And I think we are very unlike the gender critical side, as we will talk about later. When there are like allegations against someone on our side, people are very quick to just be like, okay, yeah, fuck them. Like, we don't need people with, like, if Pedro Pascal sexually assaults someone, I don't care that he's pro-trans rights. I don't care that he's, like, said J.K. Rowling's a loser. He would be a bad person in my book, and I'd be happy for him. Like, an example was, what was his name? It happened to a guy recently, a writer. God, I should really look it up. What was his name? Maybe chat knows. Who's the guy I'm thinking of? There's a guy who's, like, kind of left wing, and then it turned out he had like sexually assaulted people or something. Neil Gaiman. Like what happened with Neil Gaiman recently, he was kind of viewed positively by the like progressive rights movement, and then as soon as the allegations came out, everyone was like, oh, okay, fuck him. That's disappointing, but he's like dead to us now. Those like were credible, in my opinion, allegations, which he seems to have at least in part admitted to. But also he has a PR team, and he has credibility, and he is a cis man, and all of these other things which at least people were prepared to hear his response, and there will be people who will blindly defend him, and it won't destroy his career or any of those kinds of things. But when the gender critical movement starts targeting random nobody trans people who don't have, well, they're trans people, so already they're in a worse position, who don't have millions of fans, loads of money, a PR team, loads of like societal credibility behind them, it will be very easy to accuse them of things. And I'm not saying this is like some kind of preemptive defense of trans people being accused of sexual assault, whatever. Some trans people are bad people and have sexually assaulted people, and fuck them. Like, they should face the same consequences of anyone else who sexually assaults someone. But yeah, like, there's already revenge porn as a thing that is there to destroy the careers and reputations of women, and they already do that about trans people. And there's already fake revenge porn of people, you know, that I and others that I know have been a victim of. And it's just going to get more credible and more real, and it is kind of terrifying. And I just don't know if we have like a response to that yet, or a way of dealing with that. And I think it's going to be a painful process over the next couple of years as people understand what is possible and what the goals of these people are and what they do. And I feel like this is going to be seen as one of the first things of it. And yeah, it's going to be worse when it's no longer attacking a cis man, like, rich celebrity. So just what I am asking is for people to be hypercritical of anything, and just be aware that we live in an era now where you cannot trust videos anymore. Like, seeing a video of something isn't necessarily proof that it's real. And maybe we're already at the position, people that, like, societal conscious has got their own photos. You see a photo of someone doing something, like you see a photo of Obama doing a Nazi salute or something, and you're like, hang on a minute, people can edit photos. I didn't hear about this before. I'm at least going to look this up to see if this is true and can be corroborated by a good source. And it turns out, no, Obama hasn't done a Nazi salute. But are people there with videos? If you see a video of Obama doing a Nazi salute, are you going to be like, oh, Obama's a Nazi? Or are you going to be like, this seems a bit odd? And more importantly, are other people who aren't you going to do that? And then when, instead of targeting Obama, it's targeting some random person you've never heard about before, and it's not doing a Nazi salute, but it's like them being involved in porn or something like that, are you going to be like, I should be suspicious of this? Or are you just going to be like, oh yeah, I assume it's true, whatever? Yeah. Scary times ahead, I think. Am I real? Turns out I've been AI this whole time. I don't know. Do I hope I'm real? Don't know. I don't know if I care if I'm real or not. I'd be disappointed if it turned out I wasn't real and everyone else was. I think that'd be a bit odd. If it turns out I'm a simulation, hello simulators, could you please increase my living standards? Whatever little sliders you got up there, turn them up. That'd be nice. If I ever get ill when I'm older, maybe just do like a hard reset, and I'll go back to being like 21 again. You can do it. You can do it. If I'm not real, that'd be great. If I'm being imagined, like, imagine me just the same but richer. That'd be nice. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah. Right, I said I'd do super chats. Let's do them. If there are any, we know we've got at least one, or I know that we've got at least one. Please never feel obliged to send me a super chat. Obliged? God, I said that in a pretty stereotypical British way, didn't I? Don't ever feel obliged to send me a super chat. If you ever want to, you're totally welcome, and I would love to read them all out. So let's see what we have here. So we have £10. Thank you very much from Sean Ishwood. That's very kind. Note. We started with a note, or is this one from the one before? Any number divides 0, including 0, since b divides a means there is some integer c with a equals bc. But x equals 0x, and in particular 0 equals 0 times 0. But 0 divided by 0 is undefined outside wheel theory. Okay. Yeah, I mean, any number divides 0, I guess. So, um, yeah, I guess it's like, yeah, it's just the reverse of times anything by 0, and you get 0. But you can't divide anything by 0 because divide by 0 is undivided. Yeah, makes sense. Thanks, Sean. I got $5 from Scotty Orange. Good name for the fight. Thank you very much, Scotty. Got another $5 from Emanon with no message. Thank you very much. That is very kind of you. And I got £5 from MJ saying, can I ask a genuine question about the number 10 Pride Bunting Guarding Party? Would you have gone if you had been invited? Yeah. I guess I briefly touched on that. I don't know. I think that I either delusionally or otherwise have come to terms with the fact that I think I could do it, whatever it is. I feel like I'm good enough at talking to people that when I was invited to Parliament a while ago, which I did a video on, which you should go check out if you didn't see, when someone said, do you want to come to this and talk to some politicians, I didn't feel like, oh, I don't know if I can do it, I don't know if I'm good enough. I just was like, you know what, I think I can do it, and I think there might be people better than me at it, but I'm not the worst person at it. I don't think I will go and make a mess, and like me going takes the burden off someone else, and also me going gives me experience doing it, so I might become better at it in the future. But it wasn't quite the same as this event. If I knew in advance it was going to be used for some propaganda video for Keir Starmer, I wouldn't want to appear smiling in a video with Keir Starmer. But if I did, I think I would very quickly, very strongly have something to say about that. If I was given the chance to talk to Keir Starmer or Bridget Phillipson or West Reading or one of those people, I mean, maybe that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, or maybe it's not. If I knew it was like, you have one opportunity in your life to speak to West Reading face to face. Oh, I'm taking that. But if it was like, we need someone to go and lobby on behalf of whatever to try and change the mind of West Reading, and that means not just going in super hard and hostile. Pardon me. I think I could do it, but whether I'd want to do it, it's difficult. I honestly, it's the kind of thing where if someone invited me, I'd have like a panic attack for the next 3 days while I thought about it. So we'll see. Were you allowed to include a message if you donate enough money, $2? So on like the line and stuff, they only read out super chats of $5 or more, I think. Which is what Transatlantic Calling Show is on, but I don't get enough super chats that I feel like I need to do that. So if you want to donate whatever the minimum that Google lets you do, like 50 cents or 1p or whatever it is, if you want to do that, I'll be grateful and I'll read out your message. Unless I start getting like 60 super chats every time, and then might tweak the settings on that. If you weren't allowed to listen to thrash or death metal ever again, what genre would you choose? Oh, do you mean if thrash metal and death metal were banned, what would be my next top genre? Does death metal include things like deathcore? That's my first question. But I fucking love power metal. I used to joke that if I had discovered power metal before thrash metal, then I probably wouldn't like any other music. But fortunately I was introduced to something heavier first. Power metal's very good. I really like it. But I also really like beat down and hardcore and deathcore, like Hatebreed and stuff. So there is a lot of music I like. I just feel like thrash metal is just the most fun. Anyway, let's move on to the next things because we're running out of time and there's like a million other things to cover. So we better talk about this main news. There's like 2 parts to this. So an update we have on the Sandy Peggy Dr. Beth Upton case. So I've done videos on my channel about this before, which you can go and check out, but a summary is there was a nurse and a doctor who worked together, both of them women. The doctor is also trans, and the nurse took issue with her being trans and complained, and then she was like given a disciplinary and let go, I think, or she at least given a disciplinary. And she's obviously doing the classic gender critical run where she claims that she was discriminated against because of her gender critical beliefs, simply for believing that sex is real. Simply, that is all. And then now they're having this big case about it, and it's a huge media event, and they're trying to destroy the life of the trans person at the center of this. This is the nurse. This is the doctor at the center of it, Dr. Beth Upton, who seems to be handling this heroically, at least in public. I think she's doing very well to survive the horror being cast upon her by the British media and political class. But anyway, we had various accusations in the past which made it sound like Sandy Peggy was an absolutely horrific person. But they were generally focused around her views on trans people. And we just had another part to this case where it came out that she used a lot of racial slurs. Bearing in mind that she's a nurse. So this is incredibly from The Times. The Times is like not just a right-wing newspaper, it's like the gender critical propaganda machine. And I am shocked they covered this at all, because it's negative for the gender critical movement. Like, this is a gender critical flagship case at the moment. Since the Supreme Court ruling has gone their way, this is like their main thing at the moment. So their article is Sandy Peggy blames her upbringing for use of racial slurs. And but importantly, these slurs weren't from when she was a kid. So I do think that the excuse, I said this because of my upbringing, in certain circumstances has some weight. If you were brought up in a racist household and you were saying slurs for people when you were 8, and now you're 40 and you deeply regret it and you understand why those slurs are bad and you've said so, I just feel like, I mean, maybe race is a bad example because I'm a white person, I shouldn't really be saying it, but if someone, for example, I grew up in a time where homophobia and transphobia were just completely normal, and I definitely had transphobic and homophobic opinions when I was a kid, and said some transphobic and homophobic things when I was a kid, and you could, if you had a full script of everything I'd ever said and done, you could find an example of me saying something that on its own just is terrible. But importantly, I think that was when I was a child. And also now, I don't have said anything like that in 30 years. No, 25 years. At least. And I also now know that it's really wrong and disgusting, and actively campaign against those kind of things, and the system that created a world where I grew up saying things like that. She didn't say this when she was a kid. She was saying this very recently. The reason is it's come up as part of this. So yeah, so I mean, pretty grim here. I think, is this the one? Yeah, so even the Times says, on the subject of racial slurs, Peggy claimed that such terms did not cause offence in the area she lived in, which has residents with Chinese and Pakistani backgrounds. She defended her comments on the topics such as the flooding in Pakistan and a comment about putting bacon through the letterbox of a mosque as dark humour. It was never my intention to offend people. So her friends have leaked this, basically. Friends. It was never my intention to offend people outside of my group of what I thought was very close friends. she said that she had a fear of the mosque being built because she was frightened of Sharia law, and had an objection to illegal immigrants. So, yeah, it was put to her that two witnesses who attended her birthday lunch recalled her using derogatory terminology to talk about Dr. Beth Upton. And she was described as waging a hate campaign against Dr. Upton. So, this is from The Times. This is like the gender critical propaganda machine. So we got a more neutral review of this, where it was claimed that she called Dr. Beth Upton a weirdo, a freak, and it, which is like calling a trans person it is like a very brazen example of transphobia. It further heard that she had shared a series of racist jokes about Pakistani people and Muslims to a group chat, including mocking the victims of floods that killed thousands, saying the country would look like a bowl of Cocoa Pops, which for anyone outside the UK who might not have that cereal, they're like rice puff things that are covered in chocolate, and when you put milk in, it makes the milk also go like chocolate coloured. I don't know if I want to read these out or not. Like, these are there are some pretty bad ones. Yeah, so I think what's important, I'm not just going to read out all of the horrible things she said, but I think what's important is she called Pakistani and Chinese people very British slurs for, so you might read these and be like, I don't know what these words mean, I'm not going to say them, but there are British, like very British slurs for Pakistani people and Chinese people, which even when I was a kid were already outdated. When I remember hearing both of these and being aware that they were slurs when I was a kid. I think they're more like from the 70s, maybe, when they were more, not acceptable, but like more common, more mainstream. It has been like, everyone knows that these words, like everyone in the UK knows these words are slurs. This isn't a case of like for example, troon. Troon is a slur that the gender critical movement invented like in the last 10 years or so. It is a slur, but most people have no fucking idea. And if someone called me a troon in front of my friends, most of them wouldn't even notice because they don't know what that word means. I've never heard it before. The people know what I just want. For anyone who's not in the UK, people fucking know what these words mean, all right? Everyone knows they are slurs. But yeah, if she admitted to sending offensive jokes about the deaths of Pakistani people in floods, but said it was humor. Document Peggy further admitted to using the words slur and slur, but said that the Pakistani and Chinese people she knew had not taken offense. So she'd literally been saying these in front of people of those backgrounds, which is pretty grim. Yeah, again, it says that she has a fear of a mosque being built, which is ridiculous. Even the BBC has covered this. Trans tribunal nurse accused of wanting to post bacon to mosque. Allegedly told her colleagues that she wanted to post bacon through the letterbox of a local mosque, which is pretty grim. I just want to... Yeah, again, even the BBC also reports on her saying weirdo and freaking. There's definitely a bit. Maybe it's in... I think it's in this one. Okay. Here we go. She is also asked about using the word slur for Pakistani people regularly whilst growing up. Yes, it was normal. Okay, like, as an 8-year-old or whatever, quite possibly that is the point I was making at the start of this. I had my first job in a shop called this and worked there for a year with good relationship. I socialized in a pub, country inn. It was owned at the time by so this is what I mean. Like, if you say, yeah, this was a normal word we used to use, I think a better, like, a good faith attempt at steel manning a position, she could say, yes, unfortunately, growing up, this slur was normal in the community I existed in, so I said it a lot, and I now know it's wrong. And I would never say it now. And maybe even I apologize for saying it in the past. I mean, what else can you do? That you can't go back in time and stop yourself saying it. But at least if you know it now. She then tries to justify that, saying she worked in a shop with like the slur as a name run by someone of Pakistani descent. But then literally in the sentence right now, today, describing this, uses the slur. And it was owned at the time by a slur called Jav. That was just how we described them. So, like, say in court today, and it's not just that it's the politically correct word. I mean, obviously, politically correct has, I don't know. I feel like politically correct and correct are just synonyms. But yeah, it's important to know, like, there are not many letters difference, perhaps, if you're not British and you don't. We know, okay. This isn't like, there's a reason that they've censored it. It's not a thing that you can say. But I'm just trying to find this one here. There's yeah, okay. She then notes she has a lot of Chinese neighbors today, now, and Chinese restaurants on her streets. She says she has never heard my Chinese neighbors complain about being called slurs. So she's calling her neighbors now, in the modern era, this slur for a Chinese person. She has no problem with immigrants coming across to work, only illegal immigrants. Okay, fair enough. It was never my intention to offend people. Okay. Okay, so it is unsurprising to me that this is a thing. I don't think anyone watching this now is like, oh no, I cannot believe it. How could she have done such a thing? This is unbelievable. I can't believe. No one's thinking that. And the reason is because there is just shared causality between being gender critical and saying racist things. That isn't to say everyone who's gender critical has said racist things, or everyone who's gender critical is a racist, or that every racist is also transphobic / gender critical, whatever. No, there's just a strong correlation between holding those two views and holding homophobic views and holding sexist views. And the reason for that is because they have a shared worldview which creates this kind of behavior. If you think people different to you are lesser to you in some way, or that talking down to people is acceptable, or that difference is scary or disgusting, like it's okay that there's a church built somewhere, but there's not okay that there's a mosque built there. Like you think that like people are alien and different. If that's a way of viewing the world that you have, then you're more likely to hold that view, that same way of thinking about multiple different groups. Like if you're just transphobic and you're not bigoted against anyone else, in order to, as soon as you end up talking to trans people online or whatever, you're forced to either change your mind or justify these like reactionary views that you have. And as soon as you start justifying them, you will pick up on arguments of other gender critical people and other like reasoning patterns, or even potentially rediscover them yourself. And you will necessarily have these, like all of the arguments are going to be treating trans people as worth less. Like that's inherently the position. When you realize that trans women are even more likely to be sexually assaulted than cis women, then if you're campaigning to remove trans women's protections from sexual assault, how could you ever justify that to yourself other than by dehumanizing trans people? Like that is an inevitable reality of that worldview as soon as you attempt to justify it. Like, it's the only way you can actually hold that view, like internally within yourself. And as soon as you dehumanize trans people and you get the little thought pattern, it's okay to dismiss these victims of sexual assault because I don't really see them as full people. You might not say that to yourself in your mind or out loud, but dehumanization is a process that you will inevitably have to go through for trans people in order to justify not caring about them when they're sexually assaulted. When you've done that for one group of people, it's so much easier to then do it for another group of people. So if you're already calling trans people slurs and you're already scared of them and disgusted by them and don't want to be around them, why would it's not a shock that you do the same thing about people of different races or religions. And it wouldn't be a shock that it wouldn't be a shock if she was homophobic too. Not saying she is, not saying she isn't. In my opinion, I live in the UK, but yeah, it's never a shock. It's never a surprise at all when it turns out a gender critical person is also a different type of bigot too, also a racist, also homophobe, or whatever. It's very unsurprising, and we've already seen that like a lot of the gender critical movements since winning the Supreme Court decision have like openly pivoted to being anti-immigrant now. It's like, as well as being a shared thought pattern with a shared causality between the two beliefs, it's also like they're like political allies. Obviously looking at like Donald Trump, for example, his main like couple of things are hating immigrants and hating trans people and loving tariffs. I don't know. That's a Donald Trump specific thing, but like the whole global right wing at the moment is really focused on those things. And if you are someone who is transphobic, then you're going to consume a lot of transphobic media, and all the transphobic media is being created by people who are also racists. So you're inevitably going to catch some of that racist media on your timelines and your algorithms and all that kind of stuff too. And it uses the same argument pattern that you've already used in your own mind to justify hating trans people. So it's not going to seem so crazy to you, some of this racist stuff that you read. You're already primed to accept it. And there's groups who are really invested in also selling that same idea to you because they're racists. And the racists will want the transphobes on their side, and the transphobes will want the racists on their side. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyway, how this case, I think, will go is we will get... this might be the last day of it, or the last day of the questioning of her. Maybe more will come out, maybe it won't. Clearly she's an awful person, in my opinion. Like, just I don't think that anyone who uses slurs for multiple groups of other people should really be a nurse. Like, if you're being that derogatory to people, like, you say, oh, maybe they own a shop in the area, an area which is kind of racist against Chinese people, and their whole livelihood is tied up in this. And if they object to you, they're worried about retribution or vigilante justice or whatever, and they just have to accept it because that's actually quite common. So, yeah, I just don't... Just pick a different job. Just be in a job where you don't have to interact with people. There are loads of jobs like that. If you're... Clearly it's not just a belief. She's not someone who just quietly has her bigoted beliefs and gets on with her job without abusing people and stuff. Look at what she's doing to Dr. Beth Upton. So clearly, I mean, what happens if she had a Muslim colleague who wanted to get change with her, or a gay colleague or something? What happens if she has patients who she just like, if she doesn't see these people as fully human, then is she going to give them good health care? Maybe not her in particular, again, in my opinion. I'm not making an accusation here, but I think in general, like a specific accusation, but in general, I think that if you're bigoted against one or more minority groups, then you probably shouldn't be in a role in a job where you might interact with those minority groups. And like, healthcare is particularly the strongest example of that, because like the idea of my health and potential like life being on the line with someone who doesn't think I should have human rights, like, that's just terrifying. Like, really terrifying. I hope that trans people are rare enough that she's never had to interact with a trans patient before, because fucking hell. Just scary stuff. Anyway, I think that she'll probably win this case because the UK is corrupt and bullshit, and the laws protect bigots over minorities, and the British government and media seems to be encouraging hating on minority groups at the moment. I don't really have any hope for this, but we know now that she's a horrible person, and whatever court ruling we get out of this is going to be like covering this stuff up, and just like giving license for bigotry, unless of case it does go in our favor, which I'll be very shocked, but we'll see. Yeah, just disgusting state of affairs. We do have another part to this though, which I want to talk about. Fucking hell, so dumb. See if we can get a picture of her. Do we have a picture of her? Oh. No. Fuck off. Sorry, I'm just battling this stupid website. I don't want an autoplay video. I don't want pop-ups. I don't want any of that bullshit. Now we've just completely lost the thing that I had highlighted. Fuck you. Oh, fuck off. Please go away. I don't want your stupid autoplay video. Why do websites have autoplay videos? Oh, we've lost it now, haven't we? Okay, I've got it back. Sorry, just give me 1 second. Here we go. So this is Naomi Cunningham, who is the gender critical movement's main legal person. She is involved in like she must be raking in the money. She is involved in like every single gender critical legal case. But she's not an I mean, she might also be an opportunist, I don't know. She's not an opportunist grifter type. She is a true believer. I have to be very careful here because I live in the UK and so does she. But she is definitely a true believer in the full scope of gender critical ideology. She is doing this out of her raw feelings about trans people. And I'm sure her getting very rich off this is also beneficial for her too. But she's a true believer. Anyway, she is the lawyer. I mean, she's been the lawyer in every single gender critical case at the moment. She was involved in the Supreme Court ruling, as far as I understand, but she was also the lawyer for Sandy Peggy, who is the nurse who we've been talking about, who is currently going for a tribunal at the moment because she didn't want to be around a trans colleague and who has been exposed saying racist slurs. Naomi Cunningham is, in one sense, very clever because she is forcing these gender critical arguments into UK law via the courtrooms, and has managed to get, like, in the Supreme Court ruling, and managed to get them to rule that trans people don't have human rights they used to have, and that biological sex is a binary, but without them defining it. Like, what, it was very clever of her to get into law. Sex is based on biology, but also we're not going to attempt to define that. Like, they've smoothed over the problem in, like, the big hole in gender critical ideology, which is they don't have a binary and immutable definition of sex, by literally just being like, okay, we won't deal with that. So in that sense, she's quite clever, and obviously she's managed to maneuver herself into this position, and obviously she's a lawyer, and you need to have some level of intelligence to be a lawyer. But also, she is constrained by her ideology and the reality of the gender critical movement, where she has to make these incredibly stupid arguments, like very trivially dumb. And this is why I kind of hate law as a thing, because she is here making these terrible, embarrassing, fucking stupid arguments in front of a judge who hasn't thought about this stuff before. And rather than us relying on this being like a public discussion where she presents an idea and then everyone points out it's stupid, they're in this closed room where only a limited number of people are allowed to be there, and only certain people are allowed to say certain things at certain times. And if the person who's there to push back against her arguments is an idiot, then her arguments just go through. And I've got two examples here, the second one being more stupid than the first, of just things that I've seen that she said. She said a whole bunch of stuff, and lots of it is just fucking ridiculous. But here is a couple of examples. So here she is trying to argue about binaries. And she picks, there's a whole bunch of stuff you could pick to give an example of a binary. Ideally, you would pick maths, because that is the only place that real binaries really exist. You could have a drawing of a load of squares and triangles, and you can say this is a binary data set because you're either a square or a triangle, and there is no like alternatives. There's nothing that doesn't fall into one of those two groups, so therefore it's a true binary. You could also do it in philosophy. You could like a classic philosophical example is like you're either a bachelor or you're not a bachelor. Like you can't be both of those things at the same time, and you go through a process where you go from being one to another, and there's like a specific point where that happens. But the problem is, outside of like philosophy and maths, binaries don't really exist. And she is trying to argue that sex is a binary, and in order to describe sex as a binary, what has she chosen? She has chosen alive or dead. And obviously, most people, when you think of alive or dead, you do think it's like kind of a binary, because you're either alive or you're dead. Like, I think to the lay person who's never really engaged with biology before or thought about this in much detail, or has never had a loved one in an intermediate state, they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, of course this is a binary. So it's just down to whether the judge has realized this or not. But here is an example of her setting up her own argument and then knocking it down without any intervention. She says she is asking the doctor to think of the binary of alive or dead. She says, we can say with certainty that everyone in this room is alive, and everyone stored in a refrigerator in the mortuary is dead. Kind of a bad... I mean, on its own, this is a bad argument, because that's just two examples. Like, you could say everything here is a square and everything here is a triangle, but that doesn't mean that circles don't exist. But anyway, okay. She then says, this is a socially and clinically salient point. She said, you don't invite dead people to dinner or challenge them to a game of tennis, and you wouldn't treat them or ask them their symptoms. That's all true, despite the fact we could treat this tribunal to many days of fascinating learned evidence on how to point to the moment of death and what is meant by death. Okay, approaching the issue of your argument. The doctor said death is determined clinically, by which I mean not using complicated investigation. It's made by checking a pulse, checking for signs of life for a period of time to make a diagnosis of death. We know from watching death in the ICU that there may still be electrical activity in the heart after clinically diagnosing death, so it is a binary state, but the definition of what exactly death is not that clear. And she says, the existence of rare edge cases does not alter the fact that in all other cases it is binary and it matters. So, you just set up alive or dead is a binary, and then like very shortly afterwards you say there are actually very rare edge cases that don't alter the fact that in all other cases, yes, okay, well, every single thing in existence that has more than one state, it's a binary if you ignore all the cases that don't fit into the binary. dogs and cats are a binary if you ignore all other animals and any kind of hybrid. Like, that is such a stupid and ridiculous argument. It's just so trivially false. It actually happens that, like, this person says that, like, what actually deaf is not that clear. They say it's a binary state. I mean, it isn't. That just isn't true. It isn't a binary state. When do you draw the line when someone is dead? For sure, if their brain and heart and nerves and stuff have all stopped doing activity, they are dead. And if someone is moving around and talking to you and engaging with you in conversation and stuff, they're probably alive. But there are cases in the middle where it just isn't clear. If someone has like a stroke in their brain and their heart is still beating and they're even still responding to like light being shone in their eyes and hitting their nerves and stuff, and to temperature and things like that, but they can't interact with you, or then they're not like awake or anything ever. Are they alive or dead? You can even get like more grey area examples of that where like someone's heart could stop beating for some time and then maybe start again. And did they die and then come back alive? Or were they just not dead? They just had their heart stopped for a while. There isn't a clear example. And when you go away from like super complicated big organisms like humans and you go to some other animals and plants and other living things, you like there are some things that can be like, for example, tardigrades can be dehydrated and frozen and fired with radiation and stuff to the point where they're just like a lifeless husk for decades, and they have no processes going on inside them at all. And then when you rehydrate them and put them up to a normal temperature, they like come back alive. Are they coming back alive, or were they never dead in the first place? Like this doctor says, what the definition of death isn't actually clear. And whenever you have something where you have like two states and you're not actually sure where to draw the line, it's very unlikely that's a binary. I mean, theoretically, it could be that you've just not discovered where the line is. But in reality, when it comes to something like alive or dead, it's subjective, like it's inherently subjective. And even if we knew everything about it, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say it, because it's not a binary from A to B instantaneous transition. It's often, in most cases, a fairly quick change from one thing to another, but not always. So why would you pick alive and dead as your example if you're then going to straight away admit that there are other cases? Anyway, that's a classic gender critical argument. And what I think is worth pointing out is Naomi Cunningham is like the top gender critical mind, one of them. Again, like it's like Helen Joyce and whatever. This isn't random rank and file gender criticals coming out with some stupid thing they read on Reddit. This is the top gender critical minds in the country coming out with some stupid thing they read on Reddit. Like these are the like, as we were talking about earlier about this person who said trans people have never engaged with what gender critical people believe. We have. And the thing is that the stupid, idiotic things you read on Twitter literally are their belief system, and they'll go and say them in court. And like, even worse than this, later on, Mrs. Cunningham is then asking about neovagina. So this is written by the Scotsman, unfortunate description, but they say asking about neovaginas, a surgical cavity made with skin from a penis or colon, which can be surgically created on a trans woman. So just so we know, there is vaginoplasty, which is where the process of surgically creating a vagina isn't only for trans women. It is also for some cis women. There is at least one technique available to trans women. PPT. I can't remember what it stands for. perineal pull through, something like that. There is at least one technique of vaginoplasty for trans women which was originally created on cis women who are born without vaginas, who want to have a vagina, and it's the same technique, and it means that theoretically someone could have both a vagina and a penis at the same time because they don't need to use the tissue from the like penis and other parts of those organs in creating the vagina. And I know there is at least one example, at least one, of a trans person who does have that because I was reading about their story, but there could be others, I don't know. But there are multiple procedures available to create vaginas in people, and some of them do use the tissue from penis and or colon and or other parts of organs of people. Also, they can use the skin from your leg for things, and etc. But importantly, at least some of those techniques are available for trans women and cis women. Anyway, she said this is one of the top legal mind, one of the main core arguers of the gender critical movement in an important court case which could decide the future of our human rights. And she says that it is obviously not a vagina because, and this is her reasoning, this is her top gender critical argument as to why a trans woman's vagina is not a real vagina, is because any sperm ejaculated into such a cavity would find itself in a dead end with no egg to fertilize. This doctor agrees. I mean, maybe I'm just too close to the ground on this and I've spent too long thinking about these things. But to me, when I read this, it was like 0.01 seconds before my mind created a list of counterexamples to this. Okay, so maybe it's not obvious to you. Let's go through them. So does that mean that cis women who were born with vaginas but without a cervix or uterus, which is a thing that some people are born with, do not have vaginas? Does it mean that women who have had hysterectomies where the uterus has been removed, no, even though they still have a vagina, in my world, in their world, in the world of reality, does that mean that Naomi Cunningham thinks they don't have vaginas now because sperm don't have anywhere to go? Why is sperm being ejaculated into a cavity the core definition of a vagina here? Anyway, there are plenty of women who never have sex with men. For example, lots, but not all, lesbians. And like we've put an egg to fertilize in here. Does that mean women who are born with vaginas and uteruses, but with no ovaries or just no fertile eggs or no eggs at all, does that mean they don't have vaginas, even though they've got the entire reproductive system there? No, all of this is fucking stupid. It's absolutely idiotic. Like, there are so many trivial, instant counterexamples that you would just come up with off the top of your head here. That it's just like, this is her reasoning as to why trans women's vaginas aren't real vaginas. And instantly includes a huge number of cis women. Like, possibly millions of cis women are included in this definition of someone who cannot have a real vagina. Which is just crazy. Like, absolutely crazy. Like, how is this the top arguer in the gender critical world? And how is this being presented in court? And how is this a position where we have these ignorant and or corrupt and or like bigoted and or stupid judges where they're making these decisions based on this person's argument and they're not just like, what? Like, my mum's had a hysterectomy. My friend was born without a uterus. Two of my friends are lesbians, actually. Like, how is this it? Like, this is the problem. Like, you see the same as this when you first start going up against creationists or something in like skeptic or atheist world. you think, oh, you hear all these big names and you think, God, these people, like, you know, they've dedicated their life to this, the top level apologists, they probably outclassed me, and then you see their arguments and you're like you've been so trained when you like in the sort of atheist skeptic world, you're so trained to be on the lookout for straw manning, and you should always steel man your opponent's arguments, and you should always try and, you know, oh, they've misspoken here, let's not just attack what they've slipped up and said the wrong word here. Let's assume they've said the correct word and trying to approach the best part of their argument, because you can see them doing it to us and you're like, this is bullshit. They've not addressed my argument at all. They've just focused on the fact that I said the wrong word or something. And then when you go in and you steel man the best people's best arguments, and you're like, oh, this is just stupid. This is like idiotic. I mean, that's because the position is idiotic and there's no argument you can construct which, like, is better than this. There are no good creationist arguments because it's a stupid position. And it's the same here. There are no good gender critical arguments. There is no good argument as to why trans women's vaginas aren't real. Like, they're always going to come up with something stupid like this, and trivially stupid. Because, I mean, the thing they're arguing for is stupid. So yeah, it's just unbelievable that someone like this is their best mind and is genuinely has more power than I will ever have, and is making a real difference and taking away real people's rights based on arguments this fucking stupid. And this is why they should always have like real experts involved in these cases. They've got a doctor here, this Dr. Currer or whatever, who just agrees with this bullshit, so he's obviously an idiot too. Like, I hate this kind of, I don't believe it's possible to change your chromosomes or karyotype. I do believe, good type in there, karyotype, spelled that wrong. Anyway, steel manning their position. I don't believe it's possible to change your chromosomes or karyotype. I do believe it's possible to change your expression of gender. Okay, cool, but there's a whole load of stuff in the middle of that, which is actually, like, you dodged around the important... No one gives a fucking shit about your chromosomes, because they don't affect your life. And it doesn't matter what your gender expression here is, if we're talking about biology. What does matter is all the parts of your sex which you can and do change through medical transition. For example, genitals, gonads, hormones, all kinds of other things that lead on from changing hormones. And yeah, and then she said, Mrs. Cunningham also says it's nonsense to suggest a man gaining female chromosomes because of a bone marrow transplant means he's changed his sex. Yes, that's because your chromosomes aren't actually the most important part of your sex, but they are one of the parts of your sex. And if your chromosomes do change because of a bone marrow transplant or whatever, I'm not sure if that's possible to change the majority of your chromosomes via bone marrow transplant, but at least some of them could change. If they do change, that doesn't mean your whole sex has changed. If you have a cis man and all you do is change their chromosomes, nothing about their life is going to change. It's not going to affect their hormones, which is like the most important part of their sex, because that leads on to so many other things which are downstream from hormones. So yes, it is nonsense to suggest that changing your chromosomes would change your sex on their own, because they are not an important part of your sex, but they are one of the parts, and they would have changed. And if someone says, here is two men and they're identical, apart from one of them's chromosomes changed from a bone marrow transplant, or some number of the cells in their body's chromosomes are now different to what they used to be, these two men's sexes are different. That's not to say they're in totally different boxes and one of them is no longer male. What I'm saying is sex is a combination of a whole bunch of properties which do have effects on how your life works, and particularly when it comes to like medicine and stuff. And these two men are different. They're different for when it comes to human rights or social interactions or sexuality in a completely negligible way, which doesn't affect their lives at all. But when it comes to rare chromosomal conditions which may or may not affect you in later life, there aren't many, but there are some, it may affect them. And some of those could be sexually dimorphic conditions or ones that only affect certain sex, and in which case they will only affect one of them. if it's specifically on those chromosomes that the bone marrow affects, whatever. So yeah, no, a bone marrow transplant cannot change someone's sex. I mean, it can't change you from like male to female because the definition of sex is not just chromosomes. But it can change. I don't actually know that bone marrow can change. A bone marrow transplant can change someone's chromosomes. Maybe, maybe not. I'll have to do some more research into that specific claim. But whether it can or not doesn't really matter for this, because if we just accept that as true, we just steel man this position and say that it can, that doesn't change someone's whole sex, because their whole sex is not just their chromosomes. Like, how else more clearly can I explain this? Maybe I'm not doing a good job of explaining it, but this does seem just very obvious to me, but maybe that's because I've thought about it loads. But it's like, if you have something which has multiple properties defining it, if you just change one of them, that doesn't mean the whole thing has changed. It just means one of those properties has changed. Sex is made up of lots of different properties. If you just change one of them, that doesn't mean the whole sex has changed. It doesn't mean it's gone from group A to group B. It just means that property has changed. But if you keep changing all the properties, then eventually the whole the way of describing the whole thing will change enough that it makes more sense for it to be in a different category than the one it originally started in. I feel like I have to draw diagrams for this. I am going to do a video where I draw diagrams for this for sure. But yeah, I just want to highlight that you need to know who Naomi Cunningham is, because she is a major player in the British gender critical movement, and you need to know she's just as fucking ridiculous as the rest of them, and they do not have any better arguments than this, and this is literally the peak of their arguments, and they are stupid. Right. Let's hope she doesn't sue me for calling her stupid. What else do we have? God, when did I start? Oh man, I've still got so many things I want to cover. I'm going to do one more. What have we got here? Got that, we've got that. Don't care about that particularly. Do want to cover that, do want to cover that. Do want to cover that? Guys, there's so much I want to cover. What am I going to do? Okay, I'll tell you what we've got. We got some medium good news from Good Law Project. We've got some American TV host saying that she doesn't care about rapists. She cares about banning trans kids from sport. I could do a rant about. We've got a scientific paper which shows that trans women's bone density is worse than cis men's bone density before medical transition. Oh, we've got some photos from London Pride, which is the biggest trans pride of all time. We've got some leaks from the children of conversion therapists in the gender critical movement. We've got a gender critical person saying something fucking insane. We've got a ridiculous gender critical person saying some wacky stuff. We've got information about a cover-up of trans people's suicides. We've got a whole fucking episode here, guys. We've also got the letter that the Women and Human Rights Committee, the Women and Equalities Committee said where they don't want the new proposed EHRC leader. What do we do? What do we do? Okay, so I think I might be away. Let me check my calendar. I haven't actually decided yet. I've been putting everything off to the last minute, as I like to do. I think I'm going to be away for the next 3 Wednesdays. I might be away for a bit, for reasons. So I feel like I want to have a bunch of stuff so we can do more videos. I might be able to do somewhat of videos while I'm away. I just haven't decided yet. There's a whole bunch of stuff here to cover. I kind of want videos to come out. Yeah, the conversion therapy leaks is probably the most important one. But it also, yeah, it would be nice to finish on something good or funny. That's why I want to do a whole bunch of stuff. I could theoretically do another stream on Friday this week. Do I want to do that, though? I don't really want to do more than 1 week. One a week. It's very emotionally draining. What do? I'll tell you what, we'll do one more thing, and I'll consider whether I want to do another stream this week. And if not, we'll just have to cover this stuff another time, or it'll become irrelevant and we won't cover it. The bone density one we can do anytime. The idiot things we can do anytime. The cover-up one is probably just going to become more relevant. I think we should do we're going to do the conversion therapist leaks. It's not going to be a short segment. That's why. But I just think it's important to talk about this stuff because it's not really, people don't know about it. So, do another stream. Yeah. Like, if I didn't have a job and a life and a, like, limited amount of emotional energy, Poppy has ruined my new leggings. She's such a rat. She just digs her claws in. She goes like this. She's like, and she does it for attention. Come on. Come on, Ratty. Look at her. Look at this little goblin. Hey, goblin. You ruined my leggings. They were new. They're ruined already. And you worn them 5 times. Oh, bumhead. Don't know if you can hear the purring. Yeah, I don't want to burn out and all this kind of stuff. But I would do more streams if I could. We're going to do this one thing. Probably with cat hair stuck to my face, so I'm going to have to keep touching my face all the time. Goodness. Poppy, you're lucky that I love you because I hate you. No, I don't. I couldn't hate Poppy, but she's a little rat sometimes. Right, okay. Let's get rid of those cat hairs. I could always do individual videos, but the thing is, this is the best way for me to record them. And if I'm going to be spending time recording videos, I might as well do it as a stream because then it works better. Yeah. We're just doing it. I am allergic to cats, unfortunately, yes. So I'll be sneezing soon and getting a red eyes. Anyway, right. So we have this article from Trans Safety Network, who are great, and I think you should follow them. And this article is, "My parents very clearly do not love me. Children of Bayswater speak out." And I just don't think we hear enough about this. So we've covered Bayswater a few times before, and they are a gender-critical organisation in the UK. And as Trans Safety Network points out, last year we exposed Bayswater's private Discord for the Bureau of Investigative Journalism, revealing evidence of child abuse and political lobbying. Bayswater described itself as offering parents whose children have a transgender identity somewhere to talk and share and be understood. But posts in the private Discord forum revealed that parents exchanged conversion therapy tips and fostered relationships with MP to push anti-trans policies. This is, like, quite transparently... Well, it's the same as all the gender-critical groups. It's an anti-trans hate group. They have since revealed more of the abusive practices that Bayswater discussed in a Discord, and, importantly, this is why they're relevant, Wes Secretary Wes Streeting met with and expressed sympathies for members of the group in an interview before last year's election, as reported for Queer AF. He met with the group again in the government, and the Department of Health and Social Care invited Bayswater to take part in last year's consultation on puberty blockers before they were banned indefinitely for trans kids. These were the people who were saying that you should put chili in your child's mascara, and like just really disgusting people, like real horrible group. But anyway, Trans Safety Network, I just don't know, they're like incredible how uh how well they do all of their like journalism and stuff. Like they're a real proper journalist organization who just doesn't seem to generate the headline. Like they're very like here are the facts, and they don't create these like explosive clickbait headlines. I think if you are someone who writes articles like hyping up the stuff that Trans Safety Network do and catching more attention whilst pointing directly back to them and asking people to support them, which you should do. In fact, I think you can donate here. There's a donate button, which you should do. I donate to Trans Safety Network because I think what they do is like invaluable. Yeah, anyway, they've done really good journalism here. So I think this little thing is going to say names have been changed. Yeah. So there's quite a lot to this article, but I do think it's worth highlighting what some of this has gone on here. When Charlotte, then 22, came out as a non-binary, their parents reacted poorly. My mum started crying, they recalled. They begged me not to take any medication for a while because they believed I should have consulted with them. Charlotte was used to their mum being controlling. She had similar reactions when they dyed their hair or got a tattoo. She also had expressed some homophobic and transphobic views in the past. It isn't unheard of for this kind of thing, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a child abuser or gender critical or pro conversion therapy. If, like, some people's parents have negative reactions to them coming out, and then after a while they get over it, and then they have a close relationship. Mine wasn't quite anywhere close to this bad, but we had to work through some stuff, and now we're in a really good place and are closer than ever. Anyway, nonetheless, Charlotte hoped that their parents might get used to having a daughter. They were relieved when their mother found a group to share her feelings about their transition until their father revealed that she was spending almost every evening on Bayswater. In the years since, they've noticed their mother becoming increasingly radicalized through the adoption of the group's gender-critical rhetoric. They say that it began with suggestions that they had been groomed online, that they may be underdiagnosed with autism. Over time, rhetoric became more overtly hostile and mocking. She's gone past this point of being like, I'm doing it because I love you, said Charlotte. Now they believe their mother's views the transition as wrong and evil. It's meant to be a support group. Maria, who was 21, living with her parents when she came out, describes a similar pattern. While her mother was supportive, her father's existing homophobic and transphobic beliefs solidified after contact with the online gender-critical movement. Maria knew coming out to her father would be difficult and delayed her transition for several years. This is why you should never delay your transition for a difficult parent, by the way, because you do it eventually anyway, and then you've just delayed your life by several years, and then they're going to do their wacky thing or not, regardless. You need to be in a position where you're safe and self-sufficient and etc. But if you're just putting off your life for the feelings of someone who's probably a wacko, even if they're your parents, I understand why people do it, but if you're in that position, you need to understand that what's going to happen is going to happen regardless of how long you waste your life. Anyway, he was a devotee of the Canadian right-wing influencer and former academic Jordan Peterson, and had expressed hope that neither of his children would grow up to be gay. Wow, would you believe it? A homophobic person who was also gender critical? Wow. He took the news poorly, according to Maria, and admitted to quickly joining several groups, including Bayswater, to help him deal with his daughter's coming out. One night, Maria noticed that her father had gone to bed and left his computer logged into Bayswater's Discord server. She was curious and began to scroll. It was just horrifying, she said. The group told him to keep control over me by not fully throwing me out of his life so he could exact some level of control and try and stop me from transitioning. So, like, they're just actively teaching people how to control and abuse their children and do conversion therapy on them. Maria created a fake Bayswater profile so she could monitor her father's activity in the group and the ideas that will influence him. Witnessing the conversations within Bayswater helped her contextualize his increasingly erratic behavior. He progressively just got more and more drawn into the whole gender critical mindset. I remember one time I was really surprised because we were having a nice chat for like 10 minutes and then he just started crying and then shouting at me like, why don't you desist? Which is words just plucked straight from Bayswater. Yeah, desist is a very gender critical word. It's such a weird way of saying it. Why don't you desist? The thing is, the gender critical movement tells each other that like 80 or 90% of trans people grow out of being trans, which is just obviously just completely ridiculous. But some of them believe their own like propaganda, and then when it doesn't happen, they're shocked. Liam, now a sixth form student, experienced immediate rejection when he first came out in his early teens. His parents accused him of having been brainwashed and took away his phone, forcing him back into the closet. Like Marie and Charlotte, his parents sourced advice from Bayswater. Over several years, Liam witnessed his mother's transphobia intensify, and with it her susceptibility to other far-right beliefs. Oh wow, would you look at that? Gender critical ideology and way of thinking leading directly to becoming far-right. What a shocker. GB News, a right-wing British news channel, is now a constant present in his home. It fed into her existing anti-trans belief about trans people in schools coming for you, he said. But it was also like Muslims are coming for you and your children. Bayswater does not portray itself as a far-right group. Group members have shared links to the British far-right news outlets like GB News and Spiked and Libs of TikTok, an American one. Blah, 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 blah. So, Noah, currently an A-level student. I'm not going to read the whole article. You should go and read the whole article yourself and share it because it's very good. Currently an A-level student has seen how his mother's transphobia has morphed into a broader reaction in politics, and she's very worried that I'm going to go off to uni, get involved in legal protests and go to jail for a bunch of years. Well, I mean, to defend her position, you might, because the UK government has made it like a terrorist act imprisonable by 14 years of prison to say that you support certain pro-Palestine groups. So by the time you go to uni, it might be illegal to disagree with anything the government thinks. So who knows? While this may appear unrelated to him being trans, Noah says in his mother's mind, the two are intimately connected. She said that she didn't want me to get the grades that I wanted. So, fucking hell. Because it would mean going off to uni, and that she kind of hoped that I would fail so she'd have more time to desist me. Look at the fucking state of this. She wants to ruin her child's future so that she has more time to control him and force conversion therapy on him. Like, look at the state of these people. This is why a lot of people say that gender critical people hate their own children. Because, like, how else could you describe this? What parent doesn't want the best for their child? Like, who wouldn't be like, oh, I really hope my child does the best they can or the best of their ability in all their exams so they can go on and either go to university or get a apprenticeship or whatever they choose to do that is best for their future so that they can be safe, healthy, and happy. But if you're some kind of controlling freak who hangs around on like hate forums because you're so disgusted at trans people you can't get over your own prejudice, then you're like, no, I want my child to fail at school, so they have to stay with me where I can control them and try and change who they are as a person. Like, just something like fundamentally wrong with that way of thinking. People like that. Noah believes her fear has led his mother to attempt to sabotage his A-levels, embroiling him in regular hours-long arguments that distract him from his study. Like, what the fuck is this? This is insane behaviour. His mother used to be generally very accepting left-leaning person who hated Nigel Farage. Now she uses her anonymous ex-account to follow and retreat with Reform MPs and express hostility towards immigrants, student protesters, and share anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about the trans rights movement. He believes Bayswater, which his mother found through a friend who was also a trans child, led her down this rabbit hole. It's the perfect radicalization tool by itself. because you don't even need to be there very long before you get networked out to everyone else, he said. Now, like, one of the things you often see, like, one of the problems, God, sorry, I'm opening loads of brackets there. One of the problems with being an outsider to trans rights arguments is you might see two sides accusing each other of the same thing, and you might just be like, nah, this is just two different people just accusing each other or whatever. You often see the gender critical movement accusing trans people of being a cult. And I'm about to accuse the gender critical movement of being a cult. So when you see these two accusations being thrown at each other, or the same accusation being thrown both ways, don't just be like, oh, this just must be what people do when they're arguing. No, go away and look at the actual behavior and make a rational assessment of what is going on. If LGBT people or just trans people are a cult, why do they not act like a cult? Why do gender critical people act like a cult? Here we go. They describe their parents as becoming increasingly isolated. Isolating people is what cults do. They feed you more and more extreme beliefs, and as you have more and more extreme beliefs, your people around you become less and less able to tolerate your wacky, crazy, hateful, horrible ideas. And the cult keeps saying, yes, the people around you, they all hate you. Come deeper, come join us. We're the only people who understand you. That is how they lure people in. They target vulnerable people, and that is what all cults do. It's what Scientology does. It's what Jehovah's Witnesses does. It's what these gender critical people do, and it isn't what trans people do. My mum finds it really challenging to go out in public. Meeting someone who has an ally badge, that would be enough for her to go off on them. Crazy. Charlotte says their mother spends all of her evenings talking to parents from Bayswater and doesn't really go out and talk to people as much as she used to. Even though her father is also even though Charlotte's father is also transphobic, their mother's extreme positions have put their parents' marriage in jeopardy. Again, it tears apart all of your relationships. This is what cults do. This is like the core things that cults do. They control your relationships with other people, because if you listen to a whole range of views, you won't be able to believe the cult views because they are crazy and extreme. So the cults have to isolate you from other people. So they will tell you things like you can't trust someone with a rainbow pin or whatever. And it tears apart marriages. Gender critical has ruined so many marriages over people losing their fucking minds over trans people rather than just accept and love their own children. The greatest harm of parents joining an anti-trans group like Bayswater is the impact on their children. Maria holds Bayswater... Sorry, Poppy just scratched my leg. Maria holds Bayswater responsible for her father's abusive behaviour. We have really bad arguments, she said. Every time that happened, I would quickly check the group to see if he had been posting, and actually him interacting in the group used to be very strongly correlated with how badly he treated me in the days after that. Despite support from her mother and her other family and friends, her father's behaviour took a significant toll on Maria. I think I became quite suicidal. Right, so this guy is isolating himself from reality in some fucking hate cult, which is telling him to abuse his child, and it's causing her to be suicidal. And we're supposed to treat gender critical as some valid of respect in modern society fucking belief. These people are disgusting. How, like, this is the kind of thing that a conversion therapy, like a comprehensive conversion therapy ban, should really be making, like, illegal. And that's why the gender critical movement opposes a conversion therapy ban. Not because they think that conversion therapy is, like, technically not how it's described or whatever. It's because what they want to do is conversion therapy. They want to force their children to detransition. They want to control their lives. They want to take them out of school and make them live in this cult world where they don't have control over their own futures and their own lives, and fail at school and feel suicidal because they hate trans people. Yeah. Man, it just goes on and on. I think you should read this article. There is a lot to it. It's a very well researched article. But just you got to understand how grim these groups are. It's not like a bunch of people with concerns about trans women playing darts or whatever, meeting up and having a nice conversation and then going home and living their lives. Gender critical isolates people. It sells them horrific, hateful ideas which cause them to harm their own children, and then isolates them further and further until that's all they do, all they interact with. The only people they can have in their lives are other people who hate trans people as much. And then they start selling them other ideas like hating immigrants, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, and people go down these rabbit holes and they lose their lives and their families over it, and they hurt their own children because of it. And these are the groups that Wes Streeting is sympathizing with and meeting with and letting them decide policy. This isn't just like, oh, Wes Streeting accidentally picked one bad group and he didn't realize it was bad. All the gender critical groups like this. It's an evil movement. It's horrific and it harms children. And it is disgusting that they have political power in this country. Anyway, run out of juice now. We've been going for 3 hours. Thanks for hanging around, everyone. I don't know if I'll be here next week or not. I may be, I may not be. I don't know. I don't know which of the next 3 weeks I will be here. And it's quite possible I will not be in my studio, my green screen room, if I do one. So we will see. No promises right now. Just keep an eye on my Blue Sky and on my YouTube. I will make sure it's clear what's going on before it happens. Hopefully. It's not a professional job over here, I'm afraid. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you all soon. And please feedback on how this channel's going and stuff. I'm feeling quite I always feel good when I'm doing the streams. Then afterwards I feel a bit anxious. But man, it's a lot of work. But yeah, let's just keep hoping that it gets better. Right, my brain's run out of juice now. I'm just babbling. Goodbye, everyone.